All right, welcome back. We have another story, another journey, another narrative. I absolutely love doing these because we have the opportunity and the chance to be able to talk with people all over the nation. Sometimes it's even international. I've had a couple that we've done international, but this one coming from Puerto Rico. So I'm really grateful that we're able to span even some of the ocean and some of that kind of stuff. We talked in the green room. So I'm kind of excited to hear the differences in the stories and that part. But so thank you for taking the time, Dave. First, let's make sure I got that part out. But I always like to start these questions and this part of it. Who are you? Who is David? Because our audience doesn't know you. So I love the introduction and being able to say, okay, we've got 30, 60, 90 seconds in an elevator, possibly, like just give us a little, who is David?
So first off, thanks for the introduction, and love being in Puerto Rico. I just hope the internet holds out for the sake of the podcast.
We'll get it done.
That's the only challenging thing. But who is David? You asked me that question, and I start running through the play in my head, like who am I? And I like to say I'm just a regular person that survived a broken childhood with drug addicted parents, struggled with a drug addiction himself for 20 years and was able to finally break free from that in 2013 and get hyper focused on helping other people and just trying to be better every single day, and went from horrible drug addiction and negative net worth to being worth millions of dollars and being able to help a lot of people have a lot of success in their life in different ways. So that is who I feel like that's the best answer I could give you for such a short notice.
No, well, that's the reality of this, and we like to be authentic here, so there's nothing off the table, right? I love what you said, though, because especially as you look at that, there's two journeys that are going on, and oftentimes, especially, and I'm going to go down this road because I see it right away here, but we often, in life and in business, we kind of try to separate that out, but they can't be. Everything that we do kind of meshes together. And when our lives are falling apart, it definitely affects business. When businesses are falling apart, it actually affects our personal lives. And so as you're kind of going through, you have two building stories. You have your own personal life that you built, the personal development side of it. Plus, on the other side of it, you've got the business side that you've been building and developing. So you've got these two things that are kind of working in cohesion with each other. I'm sure that there's probably a lot of conversation in and around that, but that's the direction that I feel like is going to be most beneficial. So as we look at this and we start into this conversation, this journey, what did you think your life was going to be like before you started a career, before you stepped into, and I know you're a little bit into insurance and things like that, but what did you think your career was going to look like before you got into it?
Yeah, I always had high hopes and big dreams ever since I was little. I've always liked business, and I like movies about business and seeing people have success. And I always thought that was going to be me. Now, the difference is, and what I know now is, like, my thoughts, my hopes, and my dreams weren't aligned with my actions. So I was doing a lot of things that weren't really aligned with what my goals were. It was me just settling for what was given to me, and then like rationalizing, like in your head, and being like, oh, cool, yeah, this is my dream job, even though this dream job isn't actually giving you what the thing that you actually really, really wanted. But you're just like, all right, this is where I'm at right now. So insurance is actually the reason I got into insurance is because I was in my mid 30s. And I finally came to that realization. I struggled with a drug addiction for 20 years. I got clean in 2013, had my last drink and drug there. So celebrated 12 years clean in July. And, so finally like beat the addiction, working on being better every single day, working on myself. And then, come to the realization, it's like, all right, well, time to fix this career thing and time to get back to, the goals that I had when I was a teenager. Like, and I realized at that point, there's nothing I've done up to that point. There's stuff I was proud of, and there's like, where I thought I was winning and doing well, but like nothing was like on the path to the success that I really wanted to have. It was just like me settling. And I was like, man, I need to find that thing that can get me what I want. Doesn't mean it will. It's not a guarantee, but at least I'm on the right path. I could go all in on that. And at least I know I'm like working for what I wanted. And that's how I found insurance. So when I did find insurance, the goal was to to have that success. Now, the difference between now and then is, back then I'm like, well, if I made 100 grand a year, I was like, I don't have a lot of bills. I got some money saved. I'll make some smart investments. I can make like 2 grand a week. I could live a pretty good life. Right. So like I was putting this like ceiling over myself on like what I was trying to accomplish. So that was the goal. That was what I wanted, even though it still wasn't aligned with what I wanted, but I was settling. And then I quickly caught up to that and realized, man, I could do so much more. And now it's just like, I'm like super optimistic about what I accomplished in this industry. I mean, everybody accomplished a lot, but every year just keeps getting a little bit better than the year previous. So that's the long drawn out answer.
Well, but there's a lot there to
that
uncover.
question.
Yeah, no, there's a lot there to uncover. All right, so here's the 3 different topics, and there's a couple things I really want to dig into here because I think it's really important. The first thing that you said was the actions of your life were not matching your dreams and your goals. That then led to this aspect of what you said, rationalization / settling for what was going on. So when you look at your life, where did that breakdown happen? And maybe that started in childhood. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Where did that breakdown happen where it was like, okay, I do have big dreams. I have big goals, but I don't have the actions to be able to put or achieve or meet all of those big dreams or all those goals. So where did that breakdown, if you were looking back now, obviously, where did that breakdown start? How did that kind of start to form that false narrative of, okay, and I'm jumping in here too, but that false narrative of I'm not valuable enough to attain that bigger goal. I'm only this valuable, so I'm settling at that level lower. So I'm assuming on that, but let's just start with where was that breakdown that the actions didn't meet the goals?
Yeah, the first thing is it's easy to look back, right? So like when you're in it, like when I'm in this situation, like you don't realize, and that's like your ego, or at least for me, I'll talk about myself here, but it's like my ego, like tell me I'm in control, I can do what I want, like I got this, right? A lot of times when people talk about ego, they think ego is like just thinking you're better than other people. But for me, like ego is, the inability to learn, like the inability to be open-minded about things. But it's easy, like once you get past that, right? And then you have the growth and you start having the success, and you can look back and like, man, this is why I suck. This is what held me back. This is what was stopping me. So it's so easy to look back at that. And, and once you start learning to look back at things like that, then you start being a lot more aware of your current situation and a lot more open-minded looking, because you're like, all right, well, this happened before and this slowed me down or held me back or gave me the limiting beliefs. Where am I at now? I just went to like a Tony Robbins conference, and we had to write down the 3 limiting beliefs. I'm like, geez, I don't know where I'm. Everyone was like writing like crazy. I was like, man, I feel like I worked through a lot of these things now. I was having a hard time coming up with anything. I got to go back and try to think of some stuff for it next time. But so when I'm going through this stuff, I was just completely unaware. And I think it's just our mind rationalizes stuff because we want these things. And then what happens is like we put in some effort and things don't work out the way we want it to work out, right? Things aren't as easy as we think. We hit rejection and stuff like that. And then I think the coping mechanism takes place when these things happen. And then we're just kind of like, well, you know what? I didn't want to do that anyway. Or, you know what? I'm happy about this anyway. Or, and we start just like rationalizing, and then we start, selling ourselves on, being happy with our current situation, and selling ourselves on, why it's okay not to do this or why we shouldn't do this. I see it all the time in Facebook, and like when I run ads on Facebook and someone just put in the comments, scam. I was like, man, I feel so bad for these people. Like what's going on in their life that they see an ad and they just write scam, like in the comments, like what is that, and there's a quote that I've heard someone say before, and it's like, poor people stay poor because they think everything's a scam. And to me, it's like they're stuck in those like limiting beliefs. It's like, oh, that's a scam. I can't do that anyway. That's a scam.
Yeah.
Even someone real close to me said something one time, like, hey, do you think there's a scam? I was like, listen, don't come to me with that scam nonsense. Don't think everyone in your life that's having success around you that it's a scam, because it probably isn't, like obviously
Yeah.
there's some scams out there, but the majority of people, yeah, they're having success because they're taking chances and they're dealing with objections and they're moving forward and they're figuring things out and they're creating
Yep.
action.
So the unaware aspect, well, I'm hesitant to go down this road because it's deeply personal for me, but I think we need to because I think it's something that's really, really key in what you're saying. It's an underlying issue, especially when it comes to selling ourselves short. The piece of so when you're a child, especially and when you're dealing with your dad or with your parents, there is this aspect that you say it's okay if something doesn't go the way you were hoping that it's going to go. And that translates into business as well. So when you're looking at this rationalization, there's this aspect, and this is stuff that I've personally been working through on my own, is that hole or that ache in there that says, I wish you put in whatever it is. I wish this would have happened, whatever that is for you. I wish that would have been, I wish they would have showed up more. I wish they would have, whatever that is. And so because we can't handle as a child being disappointed by either our parents or the person that's in charge, we start to rationalize at that point, which then, let me tie this together with what you just said. We rationalize acceptance of a lower pay or a lower dream or a lower goal. Can you talk maybe just a few minutes on that? I don't know if I'm cracking open a door that's going to go down into this deep rabbit hole or not, but I think it's really important because our personal lives are so tied together with our business lives. I don't see any separation in that. And so much of the challenges that we have on a personal side also translate into our business.
Yeah. So, I think about, for instance, jobs, right? So like when I was out of work and I'm looking for a job, right? So you open up their Indeed or ZipRecruiter or whatever it is, and you look at all these positions, and then you might apply for a couple of them, be like, oh, the salary's too high. I've never made $100,000 a year before, so I shouldn't apply to this. And you're going through these different motions, and what I know now is like, you should be applying for every single job there is. Like you should be applying for hundreds of jobs, so and the lesson in that is like when there's something you want to accomplish in life, like you have to hit that with max activity, right? And you should be trying as much as you can. And I think what I've done in the past, same with like colleges, right? Like I applied for one college. Like, why did I apply for one college? It makes zero sense. Why did I apply for every single college I could apply for
Right.
and then see what the offers is, right? So it's the same thing. You want a job, you apply for every single thing, and then you wait till the offers come in. And then what would happen is I apply for a few of them. The first person offer a job, I just take it. Okay, good.
Exactly.
They're willing to hire me, right? You just take it, and it doesn't matter the pay. Like you didn't give yourself any opportunity, right? So same thing with the business. You start a business. I had a landscape business. That was my first business. That was when I was about 25 years old, I believe. And I bought these door hangers, a big giant box of door hangers, and you put them on the door and people call them, right? So first I put my number in the yellow pages, and I thought that was it. Like I put my number in the yellow pages, my phone's going to ring off the hook. I'm going to cut everyone's grass, right? I'm going to be a business owner, making a ton of money, right? I think I got one call a year with my yellow page ad, right? You'll be with a lot of other yellow page ads. And then so I bought these door hangers, and I would literally like go out to drive to a neighborhood. I would cut that neighborhood's grass, and then I'd jump back in my truck and I would leave. Right. With having only 2-3 more lawns to cut in that same day. When like knowing what I know now is like I should have every single person should have got a knock on the door. If they didn't answer the door, they should have got a door hanger. Because that's the kind of activity you need to be successful. And the thing is, like, we don't want to do this stuff because we're so caught up in like that immediate gratification. Is like, I want to knock on one door and they say yes.
Yep.
And then I want to knock on the next door and they say yes, right? And the minute that doesn't happen, it's like we just shut down and we stop trying and doing the things instead of knowing like, all right, cool. So this is the deal. I'm going to knock on 100 doors. If I knock on 100 doors and I get one client, I'm winning. That means I need to knock on 300 for 3 clients, 500 for 5 clients, 1,000 for 10 clients. But this is going to be someone I'm going to cut their grass every single week. And this is how I build my business.
Exactly.
And people are like, man, that's a lot of work. Knocking on all these doors. Okay, good. You're trying to grow a business. What are you doing if you're not knocking on doors? Because if you're sitting on your couch watching TV, that's not helping your business, right? If you're not doing any other thing, it's not helping your business. So like basically you do everything you can to create income, which be cut your current clients, and the whole rest of that day you should be looking for new clients. And that would be how you build a business. And like to me, like, yes, David, I don't want to build a landscaping business. Good. But like, that's a metaphor. That's what it looks like. So like when
Yep.
you're trying to be successful at something in life, like you're working on that all day long, right? And you're being very particular about where your energy and attention's going. A lot of times people tell me they want success with something, but their only focus is like this small, and they have no intention, and they don't put any energy into this thing they want to be successful. So I think that's so important, and to make it like super simple for people to understand is like, if I wanted to play the guitar, I don't know how to play the guitar. I don't know how to play any instrument actually, right? So it's gonna be harder for me to learn than someone that plays other instruments. But if I sat there and I played the guitar once a month for an hour, it'd probably take me a long time to learn it, right? If I paid someone to teach me, I'll probably learn it faster. I paid someone to teach me and I worked on it 4 to 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, way better chance of success.
Yep.
Right. And everyone understands that. There's no question about that. Well, like just take that regular, scenario and like change that to whatever part of your life you want to be successful with.
Yep.
Hire someone to teach you, or find someone that's willing to teach you for free and put the time in.
Yeah. So true. So true. So then let's kind of switch into this aspect of it, because you said one of the key elements, looking back, it was the fact that you were unaware. What brought awareness? What made you aware of, look, I got to do things different. Well, I got to change this. I got to go in this direction because now I'm aware. So what happened in that process? Walk me through that.
Yeah, so it wasn't this magical thing that happened all of a sudden, like I'm walking one day and I was aware. So it was actually, it was actually, all right. So I got clean. Everything's going to come with the story here. But I got clean in 2013. And, my drug of choice was heroin. So I actually struggled with heroin for about 20 years of my life. So I'm lucky to be alive. And every once in a while, I kept a pretty good job for the majority of that time. And every once in a while I would get fired because I would just be at work too messed up. I did a good job. Everyone knew I didn't realize it at the time. And they just dealt with it until I was too messed up. Then they would have to let me go. And typically when I got let go, a competitor would hire me for even more money. That's what would happen. But there would be a process of like, man, like I messed up, and I would detox myself. And for me, it was just the one substance, right? It was just the one substance that was my issue. I didn't realize that it was, drinking and all these other things led into that for me. So every single time I quit, I used again. Well, finally, my life went to hell. I lost everything, didn't have anything. And I drove to Louisiana from New Jersey. I'm originally from New Jersey. And I ended up in a 12-step meeting to help somebody else because they were like stealing from my grandparents and my uncle. And I was like, you need to stop this. Maybe those people at the 12-step meeting could help you. So I showed up as a supporter in my head thinking she needs help. Well, they started talking about a lot of great things. And I was like, you know what? Let me follow some of these things. So now I'm practicing the absence of everything. And the one thing I did different that time is, one, I got a guide, right? A help, right? A sponsor and a system and a process to follow, a support network.
Yep.
But the other thing is I didn't get a job right away, because what would happen is like, I would use too much. I would lose my job, and then I get clean, fill my bank, put money back in the bank, start working out again. And then life would get a new job, making more money. And then I'd start using it again, right? Not like, understand that was an issue. So I spent a whole year just like working on myself for a whole year. I didn't want to make money. Like I didn't even have a car, nothing. I was working on myself. And then finally it got time where I was like, all right, I need to make money. I need to live. Right. So after about a year, I got a job, and one of my first jobs was working offshore as a galley hand. And for you that may not know, a galley hand like mops the floors, cleans the toilets, washes dishes. My job before that was making $70,000 a year, working in an office with a car allowance, with 401k, managing like 40 people. So it was definitely in the galley hand was $7.25 an hour, which was minimum wage at that time. And I didn't care. Like that was the first time I made minimum wage since I was a teenager. I didn't care because for me, it was just all about let me just get to the next step, which is going from unemployed to employed.
Right.
That was it. Right. And I knew once I got out there, I would get the next job. And I would listen to, motivational stuff all day long. I'm mopping floors, just listening to motivational stuff, like listen to actually speakers that were like people that struggle with drug addiction or having success in their life. And I'm just listening to this stuff over and over again. And all I'm doing is every day I'm just trying to be a little bit better, right? At this point, I'm super out of shape. I quit smoking once I was 9 months clean. Working as a galley hand, I was probably in the worst shape of my life. And I'm like eating all this crap. And I'm like, you know what? I was like, I could continue to eat crap and like really, really hate myself, or I can make a change. I was like, I'm going to make a change. And I was like, I'm going to walk 30 minutes a day on the treadmill. They had a treadmill where I was working. I'm going to stop drinking soda. 2 super simple things. It wasn't like, hey, I'm going to work out 2 hours a day. I'm going to change my complete diet. It was just 2 simple things that I knew I could do no matter how bad I felt. And then, that went into running, and that went into like eating, eating better, like getting rid of a lot of more things besides just sugar. And I just kept doing these different things, right? And then through that, you're growing, right? Because all you're doing is you're looking for like that next habit to improve yourself, just a small little habit that you can do. And then you start growing. And then as you start growing, then you could start looking back. And now you have some like real 2020 vision on like what you're doing with your life, why you are where you're at, things that you did wrong, because now you're expanding who you are as a person, and you're able to observe those things.
I think that is the most eloquent way that I've ever heard it being put. And I love the way that you just kind of explain that, because it is the steps, right? It's the individual steps. It's that one action that you take. I know Jordan Peterson said the next action, the next step that you should take is the one that you can take. And whether that's a small thing, like you said, just like 20 minutes a day on the treadmill, just walking, and then graduate up. Just that one next step that you can take is the right step. There's an old movie called Baby Steps, and I don't know if you've seen that, but it's a comedy. But he gets through his therapy, and it's all this thing about taking little baby steps. And while it is comical, there's a lot of truth to that piece of just saying, I just take that one step. And I strongly encourage anybody listening that is the key to success, is to take that first small step. Take that thing that you're willing to do, because when you're willing to do that one thing, it changes everything, like you just said. You can now see back 2020. It's now you can see the things that you need to adjust. So what are the things that you do, whether they're the habits, routines, what are things that allow you to live and create and craft the narrative that you want right now, and to be able to maintain that? And some people call it their legacy. Some people call it, this is just what I love to do, or whatever. What are the things that you do on a regular basis that create and maintain your narrative?
Yeah. So that that list gets bigger and bigger over the years. From walking 30 minutes, but we go on a lot about this. So I start like in the beginning, right? Really the night before. So I go to sleep every day at 8:00. Like I was going to sleep between 8 and 9, right? So I started learning about longevity, right? And learning that sleep's like super important, and your body knowing when to sleep is important, because you want to hit the certain sleep stages. So once it knows when to go to sleep, it could plan for all that, versus you making a guess every single night. And then you make your sleep more efficient, and you don't need as much sleep. So 8:00, I go to sleep, non-negotiable, 7 days a week. Just travel back from California, so definitely messed me up a little bit. So working on getting back on a schedule on that. But
5 p.m. California time that you're trying to go to sleep.
It was rough. It was rough, especially like the Tony Robbins event. It ended at like 1 a.m. I didn't make it to 1 a.m, but I made it, way later than I normally would have. But yeah, but I mean, I went, for months, 8:00, right, on the dot until I traveled. And then the reason I do that is the next step is I don't use an alarm clock to wake up. Right. So why, sleep's super important. Why are you using an alarm clock to wake yourself up? You shouldn't use an alarm clock to wake yourself up. So I'll naturally wake up between 3:30 and 4:30 in the morning when I do that. And, I start the morning with breakfast, very particular with what I eat. I follow a diet that will help me, slow down the rate of my aging and for longevity, right? That's the goal with that.
Right.
Then off to the gym, right? Get some kind of weight training in. And we have a morning meeting, I have about over 100 agents on my meeting in the morning. We do a morning kickoff meeting, and I'm basically in meetings throughout the day on Zoom, right? We do everything virtual. I save a certain amount of money every week. I'm always trying to foster and build good relationships with people. Trying to give more than I take. Try to, stay in contact with our mother as much as I can, right? Try to be a better son to her. So it's just, every day just trying to be a little bit better and trying to like come in a place where you're trying to help people. And good habits. I'm very particular about my time. The TV doesn't go on at all during the week in my home. I do typically watch a movie, maybe a half a movie actually, on the weekend before I go to sleep. At about 7:00. Might watch from like 7 to 8, like an hour of a movie. And again, 8:00, like oh man, the movie's getting interesting. It's like, all right, 8:00,
We're
time
done.
to
Shut
go
it
to
down.
sleep.
Yep.
And again, it's just, obviously, if I was listening to this 5 years ago, I'm like, this guy's a fanatic, and but it was just leading into certain things. I started changing my diet a little bit more, started learning a little bit more about sleep. So then I'm going to sleep, and then I started like, wear a wearable, a Garmin, and they score your sleep. I'm like, man, wonder what it takes to get a perfect sleep score, and still working on those things. So it's just about like, looking at the different areas of your life and trying to improve them. Like nothing's ever gonna be perfect. But to me, like accomplishing goals that I have to work for are the most rewarding thing that I can do.
If you could summarize your life in just like a statement, how would you do that?
In a statement, do better, do more, beat yesterday. There we go. Beat yesterday.
Yeah, because it sounds like that's what your goals and your dreams. It's just like, okay, just a little bit more, just a little bit more, and it's not. Basically, it's the same concept of you add, do you want to? I think what is it, $100 or $100,000 in a month, or do you want a penny and then double it every 30 days, and it ends up being like $1 million? I forget exactly what it is, but it sounds very similar to that kind of concept and that philosophy of if you just double what you were doing yesterday, and then by the end of the year, by the end of a couple of years, suddenly you've got this huge amount of accomplishment and things. So when we're going to start wrapping up here, but what would be, if you were going to talk to yourself, and sometimes I'll ask this question in different manners, but if you were going to tell yourself back 2013, what is something that you would say to yourself, or some piece of advice that you would give to someone in that kind of a position?
So you're saying it's advice to give somebody that is struggling with drug addiction, or just got clean and has nothing?
Both. I'll let you interpret.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I'm sure there's tons of people struggling with drugs. So the best advice I could give that person, and what I wish I learned myself, is, complete absence is the easiest way to stop. People will tell me, well, I didn't have a problem with drinking. Well, I don't feel like I had a problem with drinking either, but me drinking had a better chance of doing heroin than me not drinking, right?
Yeah.
And that's what it came down to. And when I started realizing that, so the reason I don't drink isn't because I'm worried about drinking or doing anything, about drinking. It's because I don't want to end up doing something worse. So it's real simple with that. And then the next thing is, it doesn't matter where you are, right? So think about 2013. I was living on my grandma's pull-out couch in like 1,000-square-foot apartment. Did not own a car. I owned like 2 bags of clothes. I was negative net worth. And anywhere I wanted to go somewhere, I had to call somebody for a ride. Like they didn't have Uber back then, so it was either a taxi or calling someone for a ride. And I didn't really have money, so I was calling people for a ride, which made me network, right, and learn to ask for help, which I think is super important. And being okay with asking for help and asking for guidance and stuff like that. And it's amazing when you think that's like 12 years ago, and what could happen in such a small period of time. So if you're watching this and you're not sleeping on your grandma's pull-out couch, and have a car and more than 2 bags of clothes, like you're starting way ahead of where I started. And I wasn't too too proud to wash dishes for $7.25 an hour and be told by the cook who's in charge of me that I'm using too much soap to wash dishes and complaining about my how I was doing everything. I just didn't care. Like I was just like, yeah, okay, cool, no problem. You know, and a good
Yeah.
attitude and willingness will get you so far in life if you could do it consistently.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that part of it. And again, it comes back to those small steps, taking those small steps and achieving more and more each day. I love that. So how can people get in contact with you? What's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, Instagram, David Price Official, Facebook, David Price Official are probably the two best ways. I have a YouTube channel if you want to check me out, David Price Official. But yeah, just feel free to reach out to me if there's anything I could help you with. I'm always willing to try my best.
I love that. And that's the heart of the whole, everything that we do when we talk about this. I mean, it's the transition from a false narrative, the beliefs, the lies, and everything that you have stepping into it, whether it's self-worth or what you can accomplish or even attempting to really, truly hit those big dreams or accomplish those big goals. So that's what we want. That's definitely what we want. We want you guys to reach out. All right. Thanks again, David, for attending. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing your time. I know your time is valuable. I really appreciate the amount that you've spent with us even today, sharing part of your journey. Is there anything else to just give you a chance? Is there anything else you would like, man, I just got to get this off my heart. I got to say this one thing.
No, man. I mean, the biggest thing I say to people all the time is never settle, you know, wherever you're at. I mean, unless you're just completely, really beautifully happy with where you're at, don't settle. You know, you could definitely have more. You know, I don't think there's anything that I do incredibly special besides, stay consistent and focused.
Yeah, love that. Love that. So, all right, we're going to close out with that. Until next time, make sure you all keep writing, crafting your story, taking those steps that are necessary to become a better individual. Just remember, your story is important. Your life is important. And anything that you're doing has value to it. So until next time, we'll see you guys.